Welcome everyone. In today's video we will be discussing the sound healers of Tartaria. The populations of Tartarian Aryans established a sound and vibration based civilization as the survivors and descendants of Hyperborea, which had previously existed in Greenland, Iceland, northern Russia and the North Polar region of the Arctic Circle. The musical settlements of the Hyperboreans were the first inhabitants of planet Earth, with the communities of Hyperborea going on to become Scythian Aryans, and then in turn became the Tartarian Aryans, who had inherited acoustic techniques from the Hyperboreans, and then further enhanced this advanced technology. From 342 BC and onwards, the environmental transition which contributed to the demise of the Scythian Empire likewise meant Great Tartaria would become established. Then from around 458 BC, the political basis of Great Tartaria was founded, and that civilization would continue to exist until around 1894. Across the landmasses of northern Russia and western China, the incredible Tartarian Empire and Great Tartaria had worldwide scientific and cultural influence over millions of humans. Because the Tartarian Empire had once managed North America, Central America and South America, such was the spiritual excellence of Great Tartaria. Even countries like Australia, New Zealand, mainland Europe, Japan, India and the Korean Peninsula were extensively influenced by the Tartarians. On page 887 within volume 3 of the 1771 edition of the Encyclopaedia Britannica, we learn that Great Tartaria was most certainly a huge landmass. Tartary, a vast country in the northern parts of Asia, bounded by Siberia on north and west. This is called Great Tartary. The Tartars who lie south of Muscovy and Siberia are those of the Astrakhan, the Circassia and the Dagestan. The unified communities of Tartarians were educated in the importance of cymatic healing techniques whenever the choral singers and melodic orchestras were used to enhance the airborne telluric electricity which pulsated above the towns and cities of Great Tartaria. Families would unite together and create intricate musical compositions, where the prayer choirs and symphonic orchestras repeated melodies using the root to a major chord, which are the lowest note of a chord or scale. The integration of music in the daily lives of the Tartarians was perceived to be of the utmost importance. This is why they would educate their families when it came to musical terminology in the designated Shwetli Kwami or light shrines and the Botashra Kami or deity shrines, about the concept of modes that are a kind of scale which is created by starting another scale from a note other than its root. With this, the Tartarians used semitones or the smallest intervals in a chromatic scale, melodies or sequences of notes that were played one after the other to produce incredible tunes. Every one of the infants that lived in Great Tartaria knew about these different aspects of musical composition. These infants therefore discerned that a higher sound has a higher pitch and a lower sound has a lower pitch. Tartarian communities fully knew about melodic intervals, or the process whereby two notes of different pitches are played one after the other to form a dual note melody. During the most prosperous times of Great Tartaria, the four orchestral categories were established, where the Tartarians used to compose their healing music. The four orchestral categories were comprised of the string family, the woodwind, the brass, and the percussion family. Every single light shrine and divine shrine contained enormous aluminium tuning forks that were connected to closely installed telluric electricity capacitors inside those buildings. The metallic tuning forks apparently form specific kinds of waveform fields, and therefore each of the aluminium tuning forks functioned as healing resonators. The infants of Great Tartaria were trained in large prayer choirs to produce intensely resonant choral tones with rhythmic overtone patterns that were used to reintegrate the genetics and cells of their own bodies and minds. All kinds of choral toning were apparently used to stimulate the vagus nerve, which is an element of the autonomic nervous system, and therefore many of the Tartarian Aryans used chanting and singing to relax themselves. This, combined with the crystal glass windows with multicoloured geometric patterns, created a wave of higher consciousness throughout Tartaria. When infrasound waves reach molecules, each of the molecules absorbs a small amount of energy and then immediately transfers the wave onto the next molecule. Inside the light and divine shrines, the infrasound vibrations reverberated and were conducted into the connective tissues, blood, lymph and spinal fluids, the cartilage of the muscle and bone joints, so the congregations felt physically replenished. Other kinds of waveforms that were used by the Tartarians included infrared sound waves that are completely inaudible to humans and therefore were always used to complement the infrasound waveforms of the prayer choirs and the symphonic orchestras in Great Tartaria. The other kind are called ultrasound waves that are likewise inaudible to humans. Just as with infrared sound, the communities of Tartarian Aryans use ultrasound to penetrate deep into tissues of the body. Infrared sound occurs at less than 20 Hz. Infrasound occurs at 20 to 20,000 Hz, and ultrasound occurs above 20,000 Hz. The Tartarian Aryans used enormous aluminium tuning forks that were connected to various telluric electricity capacitors, which form specific kinds of infrasound, intrasound and ultrasound. These such enormous aluminium tuning forks were the healing resonators of the Tartarian Aryans. Each of the cymatic based light shrines or deity shrines and capacitor stations in Great Tartaria had gold, aluminium, silver, copper and iron organ pipe organs that were used to harmonise the minds of the Tartarians by using concisely rhythmic sound waves. Because of the interaction between the alternating infrasound, intrasound and ultrasound waveforms with the atoms and molecules of the airspace, the atmosphere over the urban settlements of Great Tartaria became ionised and would glow. From the perspectives of the elites and their secret society, some of these metals have been repurposed, so they are now seen as tangible assets which represent wealth and power. However, these precious metals were only ever intended to be used for attuning to the faster vibrations and frequencies for the spiritual development of humans in many countries on planet Earth. By the Tartarian Aryans tuning into these frequencies, they were able to astral project. They used monophonic sound beats, which are two tones of the exact same intensity and beat emitting a concise sound. Binaural beats blend two frequencies, usually alpha and theta. So within the light shrines and divine shrines, the Tartarian Aryans incorporated this auditory resonance so they could use astral projection. To further enhance the process of astral projection, they used isochronic tones, which are the regular beats of a single tone which resonated alongside a monaural and binaural repeating tones. Whilst the isochronic tones were implemented, they synchronized other tones of the same intensity and created a faster rhythm to optimize the attendant classes that wanted to know more about astral projection. On the 24th of April 1891, legendary inventor Nikola Tesla tested his vibrational healing device in his laboratory in Lower Manhattan, New York City. Nikola Tesla stepped onto the platform and the vibrations imparted to it by the machine were transmitted into his own physique. The famous businessman, author and scientist called Emoto Masaru, who came from Yokohama in Japan, clearly proved how emotions and sound waves influence aquatic environments. And his music studies demonstrate how certain types of sound, like classical music, generate beautiful crystalline patterns. Dr. Masaru Emoto also proved that certain kinds of music, such as heavy metal, thrash metal, generate distorted crystalline formations. Entirely symmetrical crystalline patterns form in water. Once extensive levels of research had been carried out, Dr. Masaru Emoto therefore clearly proved and explained how the rainwater, freshwater, and the saline water of the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific, and the Indian Ocean are a living consciousness. This knowledge was then presented to the academics of Western science. He showed us how all these waters had energetic capabilities. On the 26th of July 2003 in the Calgary Herald, Dr. Masaru Emoto claimed that rainwater, freshwater and the saline waters of the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific and the Indian Ocean as examples were a blueprint for reality, and that emotional energies and vibrations could change its specific corporal structure. He exposed water molecules to different kinds of music. Dr. Emoto wrote and published many books on the connections between rainwater, freshwater and the saline waters, and how the sound waves from humans affected the water. The inventor and physicist from Vancouver in Western Canada, known as John Hutchison, developed what has become defined as the Hutchison effect, which are energetic fields that cause levitation and the disintegration of metallic substances. According to the Hutchison effect, various kinds of equipment such as static machines and radio transmitters magnetically generate this energetic fields. On the 14th of August 1979, John Hutchison was in his basement laboratory assembling a wide array of high voltage equipment when he suddenly felt something hit his left shoulder. He noticed it was a piece of metal, and then John Hutchison threw it back to where the scrap metal had originated from. Just after he did this, he observed the piece of metal fly up and hit him again. This was how John Hutchison discovered the Hutchison effect, when his Tesla coils, electrostatic generator and other equipment created a complex electromagnetic field. John Hutchison had made heavy pieces of metal levitate and shoot towards the ceiling, where some pieces of metal then shredded. On the 17th of December 2010, the famous polymath and sound healer from the United States called Dr. Leonard George Horowitz noted that the 528 Hz is fundamental to everything in the physical universe and the musical mathematical matrix of creation. According to Dr. Leonard George Horowitz, the basis of the 528 Hz is essentially the love frequency. This phrase actually refers to everything within the divine creation of the universal creator. Thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Hidden History series. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next week.